Jasmine Washington had taken 3 types of courses over the course of 42 years. The first she had learned in the classroom: system theory and organizational management courses at university, master's seminars on crisis coordination, professional development courses on logistics optimization. The second she had learned during her 15 years at the Pentagon: real-time problem-solving during military operations, coordinating supply chains across 7 countries, briefing generals who needed accurate data rather than smooth talking, managing crisis response when natural disasters struck and normal systems failed, requiring someone to quickly set up new systems. The third kind was happening right now on a park bench in Riverside, teaching him that the first 2 kinds didn't matter when 2 police officers decided you didn't belong somewhere. The third lesson would be more impactful for him than the first 2. The October afternoon sun warmed his face. Riverside Park looked like any other Sunday afternoon. Families with children, people jogging on the trails, ducks looking for bread in the pond. Peaceful, ordinary, a safe day. Everything looked fine. Until that moment. Maya sat down next to him, differential equations textbook open on her lap. 18 years old, a freshman studying mechanical engineering at State University. Wearing jeans and a purple hoodie, she was completely immersed in solving the problem set due on Tuesday. Her natural hair was tied up in a bun, and her face showed the focused concentration required when mathematics demanded her full attention. Jasmine was reading a novel, past tense, because the patrol car, moving at about 5 miles per hour along the access road, had triggered the instincts she had developed while coordinating Pentagon operations for 15 years: pattern recognition, threat assessment, instant cataloging of details that deviated from normal parameters. Patrol cars didn't drive through parks at 5 miles per hour unless they were looking for something specific. This had already caught Jasmine's attention, but how could she have known that everything would be related to her? The car came to a complete stop. The engine idled. The 2 officers inside were scanning the park rather than just passing through. Their attention was focused on something. Jasmine calmly realized that something was her and Maya. She knew something was definitely going to happen. She had the training and a feeling from the past. Both doors opened simultaneously. 2 white men in police uniforms approached in a coordinated manner, moving synchronized and purposeful. The driver was in his mid-30s, of average height, with a body that had been in the gym. His badge read Kanunka. The passenger was shorter, stockier, in his early 40s, and there was something in his eyes that Jasmine recognized from her years working at the Pentagon, the look of someone who had determined the outcome without gathering the facts. Jasmine understood that the decision had already been made, and she thought about what could happen to her. But she couldn't panic. She had to pay attention to her daughter next to her. The badge of the man in his 40s read Dwyer. They approached the bank. Jasmine put down her novel, kept her hands visible in her lap, and maintained a neutral expression. 15 years of experience briefing military personnel had taught her body language, how to reduce tension, and the importance of not giving someone ammunition when questioning them. She was moving very calmly. Maya looked up from her textbook, confused. Jasmine gently placed her hand on her daughter's arm. "Stay calm. Don't react," she reassured Maya. "Good day, ladies," said Kincaid. His voice carried professional neutrality, but something underlying it suggested this interaction had already been decided. "May I see your identification?" he asked. It was just as Jasmine suspected. Jasmine's training kicked in. The question was phrased as a request, but delivered as a command. There was no stated reason, no explanation of authority. It was a standard intimidation tactic. It was behavior Jasmine knew well. "Good day, officers," said Jasmine, her voice calm and measured. "May I ask why you want to see our IDs?" "We're sitting on a public bench in a public park," she replied. "We received a report of suspicious activity in this area," said Dwyer, moving a little closer. "Classic flanking position." "We're just doing our job," he replied. But you could tell by his eyes that he was lying. Jasmine knew his intentions were different. Jasmine immediately realized there was no report. She could tell from the ordinary tone, the general statements, and the vagueness. This was a fabricated excuse, and they had done it before. It was very familiar to her. "What kind of suspicious activities?" she asked. "Ma'am, I won't ask again." Kincaid's voice hardened, his professional mask slipping. "ID, now. Don't make things difficult," he ordered. But he didn't realize he had made a big mistake. He had no idea who the person in front of him was. Maya's hand reached for her backpack where her wallet was. Jasmine stopped her by gently pressing on her arm. "Officer, we have a right to know why we are being questioned. We are not engaged in any illegal activity. My daughter is studying for her university classes. I am reading a book. There is no reasonable suspicion to justify this intervention," said Jasmine. She could have shown her ID right there if she wanted to, but she was defending herself and her daughter because she knew they would escalate the situation if she didn't. In the Pentagon briefing rooms, he spoke in a tone that presented data that contradicted the preferred narrative. Here are the facts. Here is what they mean. Here is why your approach lacks an evidentiary basis. Kaninkade's face changed. An ugly expression quickly appeared on his face, then turned into a more stern professional neutrality. "Are you playing smart with me?" he asked, implicitly threatening Jasmine. "I'm exercising my constitutional rights, which include the right to be in a public space without being harassed," said Jasmine. Dwyer moved quickly. His hand shot out and grabbed Maya's arm above the elbow, his fingers digging into the fabric of her purple hoodie and the flesh beneath. "Get up, now," he commanded. There was no turning back now. Maya held her breath, not yet from pain but from shock and sudden fear. Jasmine felt every muscle in her body tense with the controlled rage of a mother watching someone who had no right to touch her child touch her. She knew what she could do in that moment if she wanted to. But she had to stay calm. Her training dictated that she would act. But at the same time, as a mother looking at the situation from the outside, she couldn't remain calm. "Have you ever faced such a feeling in your life?" A few seconds later, Jasmine said, "Take your hand off my daughter." Her voice was very quiet, very calm, carrying the tone she used when giving orders, not suggestions. "Now," she repeated. "Or what?" Dwyer said with a mocking smile, gripping Maya's arm tighter. "Are you going to complain? Get in line, lady," he said, belittling her. Maya's eyes widened in fear. She looked at her mother with an expression Jasmine would remember forever, the look of someone who had done nothing wrong but was being treated like a criminal, unable to understand why. Jasmine slowly, deliberately stood up, keeping her hands visible and controlling her movements. "Maya, don't move, don't say anything," she warned her daughter. Kaninkade stepped between Jasmine and her daughter. "Sit down, ma'am, this is none of your concern," he said. The officers were trying to completely sideline Jasmine. That way, they thought they could be more clearly harsh with Maya. "She's my daughter. She's 18, a university student, sitting on a bench with a math book. Everything about this concerns me," Jasmine said. "As far as I can see," Kaninkade said, his voice dropping to the tone of someone making an official record. Two individuals refused a request for legal identification and became verbally aggressive when questioned about suspicious behavior. Jasmine felt the situation crystallize with terrifying clarity. They were making up a story to justify what they had already decided. This was something practiced, rehearsed. They had done this before to people who lacked the strength to resist. Jasmine was very good at analyzing this type of person. But Jasmine had resources. "Officer Kaninkade, Officer Dwyer," Jasmine said, trying to keep her voice steady and clear. "I'm going to reach into my jacket pocket and take out my phone. I'm saying this in advance, so there's no misunderstanding about my actions. I'm not trying to get a weapon. I'm taking my phone to document this incident," she warned them. "Don't," Kaninkade began. Jasmine's hand had already started moving, slowly, visibly, toward her pocket. Her fingers grasped her phone. She pulled it out, held it up in the air so both officers could clearly see it, and dialed a number she had kept on speed dial since leaving the Pentagon. It was a number she never wanted to use, but 15 years of crisis coordination had taught her that hope was not a strategy, and that preparation was crucial. The phone rang once. It rang twice. On the third ring, a voice answered. Clear. Professional. There was an authority in every syllable that needed no announcement. "General Hayes's office. Secure line," said the voice on the phone. Jasmine watched the two officers' faces. She saw the glimmer of uncertainty. She saw Dwyer's hand on Maya's arm relax slightly. Both officers were a little unsettled. She didn't take her eyes off them as she spoke on the phone, her voice with the same certainty she had used in thousands of Pentagon briefings. "This is Jasmine Washington, former logistics coordinator, Pentagon LCS Division, personnel number 77321 Alpha. I apologize for interrupting the General's Sunday, but there is a situation that requires federal witness documentation," she said. Hearing this conversation made the officers even more uneasy. They thought it might be a bad situation, but it was too late now. The voice on the other end shifted from a procedural tone to an alarm tone in half a second. "Miss Washington, are you under pressure?" it asked. "Yes, ma'am. I am currently at Riverside Park with my 18-year-old daughter, Maya. Two police officers asked for our identification without stating the reason, and one of them is physically holding my daughter's arm right now. This incident must be documented at the federal level and confirmed by witnesses," Jasmine said. "Officers, state your credentials immediately," said the voice, commanding with the weight of 30 years of military authority. "Your full names and badge numbers." Now it ordered. The change in both men was immediate and noticeable. Kaninkade's hand moved away from his belt where his gun was holstered. Dwyer loosened the hand holding Maya's arm, but did not yet release her completely. Officer James Kincaid, Riverside Police Department, badge number 4472, said Kincaid. The aggression in his voice was gone. He now sounded only uncertain. Officer Michael Dwyer, badge number 3891, added Dwyer, finally releasing Maya's arm completely. Miss Washington, describe the situation from the beginning, said the voice. Everything. Details are important, it added. Jasmine did so. With the precision of someone who had delivered operationally accurate briefings for 15 years, she recounted every detail in chronological order. The patrol car's unusual approach, the officers' synchronized exits, and tactical positioning. The demand for identification without stated cause. The false claims about suspicious activity reports. Dwyer physically holding Maya's arm. Kincaid creating a false narrative about combative behavior. As the surrounding park quieted down, other visitors stopping what they were doing to watch and many pulling out their phones to record, she spoke calmly and clearly. When she finished speaking, the voice on the phone spoke with extreme clarity. Officers Kincaid and Dwyer, move away from Ms. Washington and her daughter immediately. Return to your vehicle and remain there. A formal complaint will be filed with your department within an hour, and within 24 hours the Federal Oversight Agency will contact you regarding this incident. Do you understand? Yes, sir, said Kincaid. His face had gone pale. Yes, sir, Dwyer repeated. Both officers were in shock. They were wondering how this could have happened. They had hit a brick wall. They moved away from the front of the bank. They continued on slowly and uncertainly, like men who had just realized they had made a terrible miscalculation about who the person they had encountered was and what the consequences would be. Jasmine watched them return to the patrol car without taking her eyes off them or ending the call. She didn't sit down until the car pulled away from the curb and turned the corner toward the parking lot exit. Ms. Washington, said the voice. Was your daughter physically injured? He asked. Jasmine looked at Maya. Her daughter was holding the arm Dwyer was holding. Her eyes still wide, her breathing shallow and irregular. She doesn't appear to be physically hurt, Jasmine said carefully. But she's scared. We both are, she replied. Jasmine was furious about what had happened. She definitely wanted both officers punished. Otherwise, she didn't want other people to go through what she had. Considering what just happened, this is completely understandable. I'll now connect you directly to General Hayes. Please hold, she said. A brief silence filled with distant sounds returning to the park's normal rhythm. Then a different voice was heard. Older, female. A voice carrying the distinctive weight of someone who had commanded respect for decades and knew very well how to wield that authority. Jasmine, she said. Just the name. But the way General Patricia Hayes said it conveyed recognition, concern, and the mobilization of resources all at once. General Hayes, Jasmine replied. I'm currently reviewing your personnel file. 15 years of exemplary service. Logistics Coordination Division. Numerous commendations. Honorable resignation following your husband's death at Fort Benning. No disciplinary record. Nothing to justify what happened to you in the park. A meaningful pause. Tell me exactly what you need, she said. I want this meeting documented at the federal level. I want an official record that cannot be suppressed or denied by local authorities. And I want to know that when I bring my daughter to this park next Sunday, we won't have the same experience, he said. Jasmine knew that without federal documentation, they could sweep the incident under the rug. And both officers could get away with it. You'll get both of them, General Hayes said firmly. I'm initiating an official federal investigation effective immediately. Federal oversight will contact the Riverside Police Department within the hour. Those officers will be questioned. The records will be examined. Body camera footage will be preserved and reviewed. And Jasmine, the general's voice changed slightly, becoming less formal and more personal. If they make any attempt at retaliation, if they contact you in any way, call me directly. Not my office. Me. You still have the personal cell number I gave you while I was here. Use it without hesitation, he said. It was a gracious offer. Thank you, General, said Jasmine. Don't thank me. This is what should automatically happen when citizens are subjected to this kind of abuse. The fact that the Pentagon needs to be called is a systemic problem we need to address. Take good care of your daughter. I'll handle this, he said. And then the line went dead. Jasmine put down the phone and looked at Maya. Her daughter's eyes were filled with tears she was desperately trying to hold back. Mom, Maya said, her voice trembling. Why did they do this? What did we do wrong? Maya was old enough to understand everything, but she still couldn't understand why some people behaved this way. We didn't do anything wrong, baby. Nothing. This isn't about us, it's about them, Jasmine replied. She never gave her daughter temporary answers. She always spoke to her clearly and realistically, but they were going to arrest us. If you hadn't made that call, said Maya. I know, said Jasmine quietly, sitting down next to her daughter and carefully wrapping her arm around Maya's shoulders. I know, but I made that call. And now they'll pay the price for what they did, she said. Jasmine would make sure both officers received the harshest punishment possible. she would prevent them from treating others this way. As they sat together on the bench in the October afternoon sun, the park slowly returned to its normal Sunday rhythm. Children were playing, people were walking, ducks were swimming in the pond. Life went on as if nothing had happened. But something fundamental had changed. Their park, safe, peaceful, and ordinary, had become a place where Jasmine learned that her 15 years at the Pentagon, her honorable record, and doing everything right still weren't enough, if two men in uniform decided otherwise. She watched her daughter try to make herself smaller by wrapping her purple hoodie tighter around herself despite the warm weather, and Jasmine felt a cold, focused determination settle in her chest. This wasn't over. This was only the beginning. The call came at 6:41 a.m. on Monday morning. Jasmine was already awake. Sleep had been difficult. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard Dwyer touching Maya's arm and Kaninkad making up a false story, and she felt the helplessness of knowing that without the Pentagon's trick, the afternoon would have ended very differently. She was making coffee in the kitchen when the phone rang. The unknown number displayed the local area code on the screen. Jasmine Washington, she answered. Ms. Washington, this is FBI Special Agent Sandra Torres. I'm calling regarding the incident that occurred yesterday afternoon at Riverside Park. Do you have time to talk? She asked. Jasmine set her coffee cup on the table. Yes, she said. General Hayes contacted our field office last night. He submitted his preliminary report and requested federal oversight of the local department's handling of your complaint. I have been assigned as the lead investigator. I would like to meet with you today. Is 10 o'clock in the morning convenient? Everything was moving very quickly. Yes, Jasmine replied. I'll come to your address. What is your address? He asked. Jasmine gave him the address. We'll meet at 10 a.m., Torres said, and ended the conversation with professional efficiency. Jasmine stood in her kitchen, trying to process what had just happened. The federal accountability mechanism had been activated. Torres hadn't asked Jasmine if she wanted to pursue this, or if she was sure about what had happened. He had simply stated that he had been assigned and would be there at 10 a.m., which meant the decision to investigate had already been made at a level above local politics. The entire process would proceed with the utmost seriousness. Maya appeared at the kitchen door wearing pajama pants and a loose sweatshirt, her hair wrapped in a silk scarf. Good morning, Mom, she called out. Good morning, baby, said Jasmine, watching her daughter pour coffee and add too much sugar. How did you sleep? She asked. Maya shrugged without making eye contact. I'm fine, she said. But it was obvious she hadn't slept well. She wasn't fine, but Jasmine didn't press her. They ate breakfast in quiet camaraderie, toast and eggs, scrolling on their phones, continuing in the comfortable silence of two people who understood each other. At 9:58, the doorbell rang. The woman on the porch was in her early 40s, of Latin descent, with dark hair neatly pulled back and sharp, appraising eyes. She wore dark pants, a white blouse, and a blazer that didn't quite hide her badge. She showed her ID. Mrs. Washington, Special Agent Sandra Torres, she said. Come in, Jasmine invited her inside. Torres entered and scanned the living room with the quick, professional gaze of someone trained to notice details. Maya was standing in the kitchen doorway. You must be Maya, Torres said. I'm glad you're here. I'll need to talk to both of you, she said. She wanted to know all the details. A file would be prepared for her, and the other side's lies would be exposed. They moved into the living room. Torres placed a recording device on the coffee table. With your permission, I will record this conversation. Everything you say will be entered into the federal record, she said. Understood, said Jasmine. Torres pressed the record button and noted the date, time, participants, and case reference. Miss Washington, please describe yesterday's events in your own words, he said. Everything was proceeding in a very professional manner. Jasmine recounted it, as detailed and with the same sensitivity as she had described it on the phone. The patrol car approaching, being asked for identification, the false claim of suspicious activity, Dwyer apprehending Maya, the call from the Pentagon. She spoke for 7 uninterrupted minutes. She recounted everything that had happened, down to the smallest detail. Torres listened, occasionally taking notes on his tablet. When Jasmine finished, he turned to Maya. Can you tell us what you experienced? He asked. Maya's voice was quieter but just as clear. I was working on differential equations. I didn't notice them until the police came to ask for ID. I was confused because I hadn't done anything. Then Officer Dwyer grabbed my arm, and I got scared. My mom stayed calm and made the call that got them to leave, she said. Did the officers touch you other than grabbing your arm? Sandra asked. No, Maya said. Did they say anything about your race or your right to be in the park? Sandra asked. Maya thought carefully. Officer Kaninkad said something about people like us not understanding where we belong. I don't remember exactly what he said. It all happened so fast, she replied. Torres took notes. He looked at Jasmine. You worked at the Pentagon for 15 years, he said. That's right, Jasmine replied. the Logistics Coordination Department, that requires significant security clearance, background checks, regular reviews. You left with an honorable discharge, he said. Yes, Jasmine replied again. Torres put down his tablet. Miss Washington, I'll be blunt. What happened yesterday was no coincidence. This morning I reviewed Kninkett and Dwyer's records. There are 17 complaints over 4 years. 13 involved black civilians. 9 involved allegations of illegal searches or arrests. None resulted in disciplinary action, he said. So, in short, the incidents were covered up, and they got away without any punishment every time. But this time was different. Jasmine felt a chill in her chest. How is that possible, she asked. She was shocked that they had not been punished. Because their commander, Lieutenant Derek Broderick, and Broderick have been dismissing all complaints against his officers for 6 years. Torres paused. I think Broderick is running a gang. I think Kninkett and Dwyer are part of it too, and I don't think you were targeted randomly. You were targeted for a reason I haven't figured out yet, he said. At that moment, many questions popped into Jasmine's head. What kind of reason? Maya asked quietly. I'll try to find out, but you two need to understand something. When operations like this come to light, they escalate. Broderick now knows you have federal connections. He'll see you as a threat, and in my experience, men like Broderick don't ignore threats, he said. Torres pulled out a card. This is my direct line, cell phone, day or night. If anything happens, if anything bothers you, call me immediately, he said. What about Kninkett and Dwyer? Jasmine asked. I'll be questioning them this afternoon. Their statements will be entered into federal records. I'm also requesting the body camera footage and dispatch logs. Unless there's a genuine report of suspicious activity, this is a documented case of misconduct. I'll be in touch soon. Thank you for your time, he said. Torres paused at the door. General Hayes said you were one of the best coordinators he'd ever worked with. He said you weren't easily intimidated, he said. I'm not intimidated, Jasmine replied. Good, because it's going to get worse before it gets better, Torres said. The retaliation came 34 hours later. Wednesday morning, 7:12 a.m. Jasmine was getting dressed upstairs when she heard vehicle noises outside. Multiple engines, doors opening simultaneously. Before she could consciously think, her training kicked in. She walked to the window. 4 police cars. 8 police officers in tactical vests and the determined movements of people carrying out a planned operation. Jasmine's heartbeat quickened, but her mind remained clear. This was the escalation Torres had warned her about. She knew what could happen to her, but she wasn't afraid in the slightest. She grabbed her phone, rushed to Maya's room, and shook her daughter's shoulder. Maya, wake up. Don't panic, but the police are outside, she warned her daughter. Maya's eyes opened. What? She asked in shock. Multiple vehicles. I think they're coming here, she said, and Jasmine was already calling Torres. Torres answered on the first ring. Washington, he said, there are 8 police officers in front of my house right now. It's 7:15. It looks like a raid, she said. How many vehicles? Torres asked. 4, Jasmine replied. Don't open the door without seeing a search warrant. I'll be there in 8 minutes, Torres said, and quickly got moving. The door began to be pounded on. Hard, aggressively. The pounding was designed to intimidate. Riverside Police, open the door, one of the officers outside shouted. Jasmine moved behind Maya toward the stairs. Stay here until I say it's safe, she warned her. She wouldn't let anything happen to her daughter. Her phone still connected to Torres. Speakerphone on, she went downstairs. Open this door or we'll break it down, said the officer on the other side of the door. Jasmine recognized the voice. Broderick. I want to see the search warrant, she called through the door. We have a search warrant. Open up, he said. Slide it under the door, said Jasmine. There was a pause. Then a folded piece of paper appeared. Jasmine took the paper and read it while keeping Torres on speakerphone, so everything was recorded. The search warrant was for drugs. It claimed that an informant had reported drug activity at this address. It had been signed by Judge Herbert Morrison that morning at 6:43 a.m. They were clearly lying to pin a crime on them. This way, they were trying to intimidate them into dropping the complaint. Jasmine felt a cold anger. This was completely fabricated. But the search warrant was real. If she didn't open the door, they would break it down and create chaos they could exploit. In fact, that was exactly what they wanted. Torres, we have a search warrant. Drugs. I'm opening the door, but I'm keeping you on the line, she said. Go ahead. I'll be there in 5 minutes, Torres replied. Jasmine unlocked the door and stepped back. The door swung open with such force it cracked the frame. Broderick entered first, a man in his 50s, large, wielding his authority like a weapon. Behind him were Kninkett, Dwyer, and 5 more men in tactical gear. It was an open threat. Broderick's eyes met Jasmine's. With a cold smile, he said, "Miss Washington, we're conducting a drug search. Sit on the couch and don't move," he said. "This search warrant is fake," Jasmine said calmly. "There are no drugs in this house. This is retaliation for my federal complaint," she said. "We'll find out, won't we?" Broderick's smile widened. "Where's your daughter?" he asked. "Upstairs. She's 18. She has nothing to do with what you're doing. Leave her alone," Jasmine said. "Bring her down," Broderick ordered one of the officers. "My daughter is upstairs, second door on the left," Jasmine said clearly into the phone. "And now I'm stating for the record, which is being recorded by the federal agent, that if any officer touches her or threatens her, there will be consequences," she said. Broderick's smile faded. "Federal record?" he asked. Jasmine raised her phone. "Special Agent Sandra Torres, FBI. You've been on this call since you arrived. Everything you say and do is being recorded and will be used in your department's federal investigation," she said. The room fell silent. Broderick regained his composure. "I don't care who's listening. We have a legal search warrant. Execute it." The search was brutal. They systematically wrecked the living room. Books were thrown, drawers emptied, sofa cushions cut open. They moved to the kitchen and emptied every cabinet. Upstairs, furniture was smashed. Maya was brought downstairs by an officer and sat next to Jasmine. Neither spoke. They clung to each other as their home was destroyed, and Torres listened to and recorded every sound. 28 minutes into the search, car doors slammed outside. Different vehicles, federal vehicles. Torres entered through the front door with 3 agents wearing FBI windbreakers, all possessing an authority that required no performance. "Lieutenant Broderick, cease the search immediately." Broderick turned from overseeing the destruction of the kitchen. "This is an active search warrant execution. You have no—
I'm conducting a federal investigation into civil rights violations, and I have evidence this search warrant was obtained under false pretenses."
Torres raised his tablet. "I've been listening since this started. Your officers found nothing because there is nothing to find. This is retaliation and it's documented. You can't prove—" "I can prove everything." The search warrant application was made 90 minutes after Ms. Washington's federal complaint was filed. There is no such person as the informant you mention. Judge Morrison signed it without independent verification. You are conducting an illegal search that violates Fourth Amendment rights. Torres stepped closer. "Then you and your officers are leaving. Now, and you will report to the federal building for a formal interrogation at noon. All of you." Broderick's face flushed. "I don't take orders from you. You take orders from the federal law I represent." Torres's voice hardened. "Go, or I'll arrest you for obstruction." There was a tense pause of 5 seconds. Then Broderick signaled his officers. Some exited relieved, others angrily. Broderick was the last to leave. He looked at Jasmine. "This isn't over." "You're right," Jasmine replied. "It's not over. But it will end very differently than you think." The door closed. Torres turned to Jasmine and Maya. "Are you two okay?" "Physically, yes." Jasmine looked at the wrecked living room. "But they achieved their goal." "Me too," said Torres. "Pack your bags. For a week. You're not staying here tonight." "Where?" "A federal safe house. Temporarily. Until we're sure Broderick won't try anything else." Torres looked at the destruction. "The forensic team is documenting all of this. It's evidence now." An hour later, Jasmine and Maya were on their way to the safe house on the other side of town in a federal vehicle. Behind them, Torres's team photographed every inch of the destruction. Maya sat in the back seat, looking out the window. Jasmine held her daughter's hand. Maya's fingers were cold. "I'm sorry, baby." "Why? You didn't do this." "No, but I made the decision that started it." Maya looked at her mother. "If you hadn't answered that phone in the park, what do you think would have happened?" Jasmine didn't answer. They both knew. "Then you did the right thing," Maya said, even though it was hard. Jasmine squeezed her daughter's hand and thought about how Broderick had ruined their home, how he thought he'd won. She had no idea what would happen next, but she would find out. Very soon. The safe house was functional and anonymous. 2 bedrooms, basic furniture, the kind of place federal agencies set aside for witnesses who needed to temporarily disappear without leaving the city. Jasmine and Maya had been there for 3 days when Torres arrived with a bag and an expression that suggested things had changed. "We need to talk," Torres said, placing his bag on the dining table. "Both of you." Maya came out of her room with her laptop. She was trying to maintain a normal life while living under federal protection, attending online classes. She sat down next to her mother. Torres opened his bag and pulled out a thick file. "I spent 72 hours researching Broderick's operational history. What I found is much worse than the initial assessment." He opened the file. "Broderick has been running a systematic operation for at least 8 years. The goal appears to be property seizure through fabricated criminal cases." Jasmine felt a chill in her chest. "Explain." Torres pulled up a map of Riverside and had marked several neighborhoods with red dots. 12 families over 8 years, all black, all middle and upper middle class, all homeowners with significant equity. He pointed to the dots. "Broderick's team targets a family fabricating possible reasons for search warrants, usually drugs or guns, staging aggressive raids, then forcing the families to quickly sell their properties to avoid prosecution. Civil asset forfeiture taken to the next level, Jasmine said quietly. Exactly. In 9 of the 12 cases, the properties were purchased by a shell company called Riverside Holdings LLC. I traced the ownership. It's linked to a private real estate development company. Broderick's brother-in-law is a partner in that company. Torres pulled out another document. He's making a fortune by selling these seized properties. Maya's voice was small. Our house. It would have been the 13th house, Torres confirmed. The search warrant was step 1. Step 2 would have been criminal charges against your mother. Step 3. Forcing the sale to prevent prosecution. The 4th step was Riverside Holdings buying it below market value. He paused for a moment. You weren't randomly targeted in the park. Broderick identified your property as valuable and began building a case. Jasmine's hands clenched the table. She understood systematic operations. She had coordinated them for 15 years at the Pentagon. She was looking at a campaign that had lasted 8 years and destroyed 12 families until someone finally had the resources to fight back. The other families, Jasmine said. Where are they now? Torres's face darkened. Scattered. Most sold their homes and left Riverside. 2 are still fighting criminal charges, drowning in legal fees. 1 family lost everything. The father is in jail on trumped-up charges. The mother sold the house to pay for the defense, and now they're barely surviving in a rental. She paused for a moment. They all filed complaints. All were dismissed by Broderick. I want their names. Torres looked at him. Why? Because for 15 years I coordinated complex operations involving multiple stakeholders across different jurisdictions. I know how to build networks. I know how to organize information. 1 family's complaint is dismissed because it's isolated. 12 families testifying in the same pattern is proof of systematic abuse. Jasmine leaned forward. You're preparing a federal case. By organizing the victims into a consistent narrative, I can help you make the case faster and stronger. Torres studied her. You are a victim in this case, not an investigator. I am a victim with the skills you need. Use me. Torres slid a document across the table. The names, addresses, contact information, and case summaries of 12 families. You will work through me. I will make the initial contact. If they want to talk to you, I will facilitate it. Everything will be documented and entered into federal records. Understood. Maya spoke up. Can I help? Both women turned to her. Some of these families have teenagers or young adults. They might find it easier to talk to someone their own age than to federal agents. Maya's voice was calm despite the underlying fear. This happened to me too. Maybe I can help them feel less alone. Torres looked at Jasmine. It's your call. Jasmine looked at her daughter. 18 years old. She should be worrying about midterms and college life. Instead, she was offering to interview victims of police corruption because she understood that sometimes you had to fight, even when you were scared. Same rules apply. Everything will be documented. Everything will go through Torres. Maya nodded. Torres closed his bag. I'll start the calls this afternoon. But understand this. Organizing victims, creating coordinated testimony, Broderick will see this as a major threat. He's already escalated once. He'll escalate again. Let him escalate, Jasmine said quietly. Every escalation gives you more evidence. Torres almost smiled. General Hayes was right about you. What did he say? That you don't fight single battles. You plan campaigns. Torres stood up. Fine, let's run this campaign. The first family Torres contacted was the Mitchells. Robert and Angela Mitchell, their 20-year-old son David. Their home had been raided 3 years ago with a search warrant for illegal weapons based on a tip from an informant. No weapons were found. Nevertheless, they had been sued for obstruction. The legal fees had ruined them. 8 months later, they sold their house to Riverside Holdings for 60% of its market value. Torres arranged a meeting at the federal building, a neutral place. Recorded, official. Jasmine and Maya sat across from the Mitchell family in the conference room. The family looked tired. Angela Mitchell's hands trembled slightly as she poured water. Robert Mitchell's jaw was tight, his eyes reflecting the caution of someone who had learned not to trust institutions. David Mitchell was silent, sitting next to his mother, avoiding eye contact. Thank you for coming, said Jasmine. I know this isn't easy. Agent Torres said you've been through something similar, Angela said carefully. Sunday afternoon at Riverside Park. My daughter and I were sitting on a bench. 2 police officers approached us for no reason, asked for our IDs, grabbed Maya's arm. I called the Pentagon because I used to work there. That call is the only reason we're not in your situation. Jasmine paused. 2 days later, Lieutenant Broderick raided my home at 7 in the morning with a fabricated drug search warrant. He destroyed our home. He tried to fabricate charges. The only reason he failed was because the federal agent had already launched an investigation. Angela's hands stopped shaking. She looked at Jasmine with recognition and relief. They came at 6 in the morning. They broke down our door. They pinned my husband to the floor. They handcuffed David. They searched our house thoroughly for weapons we never owned. Her voice broke. David was 18. He had just started college. After holding him for 16 hours, they released him. No charges, no apology, nothing. Still, they blamed us, Robert said bitterly. Obstruction, resistance, fabricated charges to justify their actions. Our lawyer said fighting it would cost us more than we had, so we accepted the settlement offer. We paid the fine. We were convicted for something we didn't do. Then the offers to buy our house started, Angela said. 3 companies, all below market value, all within 2 months. We said no at first, but the legal fees kept piling up. David couldn't get financial aid because of his criminal record. We couldn't refinance because of the conviction. She bowed her head. We had to sell. 8 months later, to Riverside Holdings. We didn't know he was connected to the police. David spoke for the first time, his voice very quiet. I dropped out of school. I couldn't afford it. I couldn't concentrate. He looked at Maya. How can you go to class and act like everything is normal when they could break down your door whenever they want? Maya met his gaze. You can't, but you can decide that what happened isn't the end of the story. You can fight back. How? David asked. They have all the power. They have corporate power, Maya said, but they don't have the truth. And they don't have the 12 families ready to testify about the same events. That's power too. Torres had been silent. Now he spoke. Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell, David, I'm filing a federal civil rights lawsuit against Broderick and his team. What happened to your family is part of a documented pattern. If you testify, your story becomes evidence, and evidence destroys false narratives. What do we need to do? Robert asked. Official statements, documented timelines, any physical evidence, photos of the raid damage, legal documents, financial records showing property sales. These will be used in criminal prosecution and civil litigation. Torres paused. I won't lie, this will be hard. You'll relive what you went through. Defense attorneys will question your credibility. But you won't be alone. There are 11 other families. Angela looked at her husband. Robert looked at his son. A silent communication passed between them. We'll do it, Angela said. Over the next 2 weeks, Jasmine and Maya met with 7 more families. The Washingtons, the Chens, the Johnsons, the Okafor family, the Rodriguezes, the Patel family, the Williams family. Their stories were all the same, with minor variations. They had been targeted. They had been raided. They had been tried on fabricated charges. They had been forced to sell. Their properties had been purchased by Riverside Holdings or affiliated companies. All had filed complaints. All had been denied by Broderick. Jasmine documented everything. She prepared tables containing dates, addresses, the officials involved, and the outcomes. She created timelines showing the increasing frequency of raids over 8 years. She mapped the properties, showing they were clustered in 3 neighborhoods designated for redevelopment. Maya spoke with teenagers and young adults. She listened to them describe their panic attacks, hypervigilance, and the trauma of having their homes invaded by uniformed individuals who were supposed to protect them. With their permission, she recorded their stories and organized them into testimonials showing the psychological effects. Torres coordinated everything. Every interview was recorded. Every document entered the federal record. Every piece of evidence was cataloged and stored. By the end of the 2nd week, Torres had enough information to proceed. He summoned Jasmine and Maya to his office in the federal building. It was small but orderly, its walls covered with case timelines and photographs of evidence. Torres looked tired but satisfied. I'm filing a lawsuit tomorrow. Federal civil rights violations, conspiracy to deprive rights under the guise of law, wire fraud, RICO racketeering. RICO? Jasmine asked. Racketeer influenced and corrupt organizations. RICO. It's usually used for organized crime. It applies when there's ongoing criminal activity through an organization. In this case, Broderick's team is operating as a criminal enterprise. Torres pulled out a document. Statements from 12 families. Financial records showing property transfers. Communications between Broderick and his brother-in-law. Affidavits for the fake search warrant. Body camera footage taken by Officer Kincaid in the park which he forgot to turn on. But there are 3 civilian recordings that contradict his written report. When will the arrests happen? Jasmine asked. Tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock, coordinated. Broderick, Kincaid, Dwyer, the other 4 officers. Federal marshals will execute the search warrants. Torres looked at Jasmine. I wanted you to know before this happens. This will be public. Local news will cover it. The department will issue statements. There will be a backlash. Fine, said Jasmine. Let them react. We have the evidence. Torres studied her. How are you holding up? Honestly, I'm angry. I'm tired, and I want this to be over. Jasmine paused. But I know what we've built is solid. 12 families. A documented pattern. Clear evidence of systematic abuse. This won't fall apart under cross-examination. No, Torres agreed. It won't. He handed Jasmine a file. Copies of the indictment. You've earned the right to see what you helped build. Jasmine opened the file. 53 pages. Charges listed in precise legal language. Evidence references. Witness statements. At the bottom of the first page, under the section Complainants and Witnesses, her name was listed first. Jasmine Washington, former Pentagon Logistics Coordinator, lead complainant. She closed the folder. Thank you. Don't thank me. You did most of this work. I just submitted it to federal authorities. That night at the safe house, Jasmine sat at the dinner table with Maya. Her daughter was studying physics, but her attention kept drifting to her phone, where news about tomorrow's arrests was popping up. Mom, Maya said without looking up. What happens after the arrests? Trial, probably 6 months to a year, then testimony, then a verdict, then punishment if found guilty. What about us? We'll testify, we'll wait, we'll return home when it's safe. We'll continue our lives. Jasmine paused. We won't let Broderick take any more from us than he already has. Maya put down her pen. I'm thinking of changing my major. To what? Criminal justice. Or law. Something that will help me understand how these systems work, so I can help dismantle them. She looked at her mother. Is that stupid? No, baby. That's taking something awful and turning it into a purpose. Maya shook her head slowly. You did that too, didn't you? At the Pentagon. You took broken systems and figured out how to fix them. I tried. I didn't always succeed. But I tried. You succeeded here, Maya said. 12 families, federal charges. That's no small thing. Jasmine reached out and took her daughter's hand. No, it means everything. As evening work continued in the city, they sat together in the safe house, unaware that tomorrow morning federal police would arrest a police lieutenant and 6 officers, beginning to dismantle an operation that had been running for 8 years. Jasmine thought of Broderick standing in the wrecked living room saying, "This isn't over." He was right, but it was almost over. The arrests took place at 6 o'clock on Thursday morning. Federal marshals executed search warrants simultaneously at 7 different locations in Riverside. Coordinated and efficient. Because everything happened at once, it was impossible to warn each other. Jasmine and Maya didn't see it. They were watching the news, which began at 6:37 a.m. at the safe house. The first reporter noticed federal vehicles outside Lieutenant Derek Broderick's house. By 7 a.m., all 3 channels had interrupted their regular programming. In the footage, Broderick, wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, was led out in handcuffs, his face showing shock and anger. The news anchor carefully explained the situation. Federal authorities had arrested Riverside Police Lieutenant Derek Broderick and 6 officers under his command on charges of civil rights violations, conspiracy, and racketeering. Maya was watching multiple feeds on her laptop. Mom, they're saying this is the biggest police corruption case in the state in the last 20 years. Jasmine stood by the window with her phone, watching the same news. Probably is. Her phone vibrated. It was Torres. Turn on Channel 7. The press conference starts in 5 minutes. Jasmine switched channels. A podium with the FBI logo was visible on the screen. Torres stood with people Jasmine didn't recognize. They were probably federal prosecutors and FBI officials. The press conference began at 7:15. U.S. Attorney Elizabeth Vargas approached the microphone. She was in her 50s, calm, with an authority gained from years of prosecuting complex cases. Good morning. Today the FBI executed arrest warrants for Riverside Police Department Lieutenant Derek Broderick and 6 officers under his command. The charges stem from a comprehensive investigation into systematic civil rights violations and criminal enterprise activities. Vargas summarized the charges: federal civil rights violations, conspiracy to deprive rights under the guise of law, telecommunications fraud, criminal enterprise RICO, 5 to 20 years in prison for each offense. The investigation began after Riverside resident and former Pentagon coordinator Jasmine Washington filed a complaint following the unlawful arrest of her and her daughter by police officers in Riverside Park. The subsequent investigation uncovered a pattern that affected at least 12 families and spanned 8 years. Camera flashes were constantly popping. Reporters were shouting their questions. Vargas continued. The plan worked like this. Broderick's team identified properties in black neighborhoods targeted for redevelopment. They fabricated probable cause for search warrants, usually drugs or guns. They staged aggressive raids to traumatize families. They filed criminal charges to create financial pressure. They facilitated the sale of properties below market value to affiliated real estate companies. Families lost their homes. Broderick and his partners profited. He paused for effect. This is not about individual officers making mistakes. This is the systematic abuse of power for financial gain. This is a breach of public trust at the highest level. This office will prosecute with the full weight of federal law. Vargas stepped down. Torres stepped forward. I am Special Agent Sandra Torres, lead investigator. I want to commend the courage of the 12 families who came forward despite significant personal risk. In particular, I want to thank Jasmine Washington, whose Pentagon experience helped us build a comprehensive evidence record in a much shorter time than normal. And I want to make it clear to all officials who think this behavior is acceptable, we are watching you, we have resources, and we will find you. The conference lasted 20 minutes. Questions, answers, explanations regarding the allegations, explanations regarding the ongoing investigation into possible judicial corruption related to search warrant approvals. When the conference ended, Jasmine's phone rang. It was General Hayes. I'm watching the news. You set this case up. Torres set it up. I helped organize the victims. Don't downplay what you did. Most people fail to coordinate complex operations involving multiple stakeholders. You succeeded. Pause. I'm proud of you. Your husband would have been proud of you too. Jasmine felt a tightness in her chest. In the park during the raid, while documenting the trauma of 12 families, she hadn't cried once. But General Hayes's mention of her husband nearly broke her. Thank you, sir. The Pentagon is releasing a statement supporting the investigation and praising your service. It will be released at noon. Consider this official institutional support. Thank you. Take good care of your daughter. I'll call soon. Maya was still watching the news. The channels had moved from the press conference to analysis. Legal experts were discussing the RICO charges. Community leaders were giving interviews about the impact on black neighborhoods. One interview caught Jasmine's attention. Angela Mitchell was talking to a reporter outside the federal building. 3 years ago, we lost our home. We lost my son's college fund because of the legal fees paid for the fabricated charges. We lost our sense of security, and we thought we were alone. Angela paused. Jasmine Washington showed us we weren't alone. She showed us there was a pattern. She showed us we could fight back, and because of her, Broderick has to face the consequences. Maya turned to her mother. You're trending on social media. What? Maya lifted her laptop. Twitter. Jasmine Washington was the third trending topic nationwide. Thousands of posts, sharing the news, recounting police abuses, expressing gratitude. Jasmine sat down slowly. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't wanted it. She just wanted Broderick to face the consequences, and for the 12 families to find justice. But the story resonated beyond Riverside. It touched on something bigger, the pent-up anger of communities subjected to similar abuses and seeing those responsible go unaccountable. Her phone rang, a message from Torres. Prepare for media requests. This is going national. The trial was 2 days away. The federal courtroom was packed. The 7 defendants appeared together. Broderick, Kincaid Dwyer, and the other 4, Bradley Kemp, Marcus Holloway, Stephen Davis, Patrick Sullivan, orange jumpsuits, handcuffs. They looked far less confident than when they wore their uniforms. Jasmine sat in the gallery with Maya. Behind them were the families. 12 families were represented. They were all watching. Federal Magistrate Judge Harold Weinstein presided in his late 60s, a judge for 40 years, known for his tough trials. He reviewed the charges without showing any expression. Mr. Broderick, you are charged with 17 counts of federal civil rights violations, conspiracy to deprive rights under the guise of law, wire fraud, and operating a criminal enterprise under the RICO statutes. What is your plea? Broderick's lawyer stood up. Not guilty, Your Honor. The same dialogue was repeated for each defendant. 7 defendants pleaded not guilty. 7 attorneys represented 7 police officers who would try to convince the jury that 12 families had fabricated the same story. Vargas stood up to speak about bail. Your Honor, the government requests that none of the defendants be released on bail. These individuals abused the public's trust to run a criminal enterprise. They have shown a willingness to retaliate. Miss Washington's home was raided 2 days after her complaint with a fabricated search warrant. Several defendants have gained significant financial resources from this scheme. They pose a flight risk and a danger to witnesses. Broderick's lawyer objected. Your Honor, Lieutenant Broderick served this community for 23 years. He has no criminal record. He has deep roots in Riverside. There is no flight risk. The government's characterization is inflammatory and prejudicial. Judge Weinstein looked at the attorney with an expression implying he had heard this argument many times and never found it persuasive. Counsel, your client is accused of running a criminal enterprise that destroyed 12 families and generated illicit income. The evidence in the government's bail request includes financial records showing Mr. Broderick transferred over $2 million to organizations linked to his family. This indicates both a flight risk and the resources to facilitate escape. He paused for a moment. The request is granted. All defendants will remain in pretrial detention without bail. The courtroom stirred with controlled reaction. Chaos was forbidden in federal courts, but people holding their breath could finally exhale. Angela Mitchell was crying. Robert Mitchell had his arm around her shoulder. David Mitchell looked at Broderick with an expression somewhere between satisfaction and disbelief. Jasmine felt Maya squeeze her hand. The defendants were led out. Broderick looked once more at the spectator gallery. His eyes met Jasmine's. The hatred was pure and unhidden. Jasmine met his gaze without flinching. She had coordinated logistics in war zones, briefed generals, managed crisis interventions. She was not intimidated by a corrupt lieutenant who had established authority based on the assumption that the victims would not resist. He had made the wrong assumption. The judge banged his gavel. The trial date is set for April 15. Pre-trial motions are due by March 1. Court is adjourned. The press was waiting outside the courthouse. Cameras, microphones, reporters shouting their questions. Miss Washington, how does it feel to see Broderick arrested? What would you like to say to the families who have been abused by the police? Are you satisfied with the charges? What's next? Jasmine stood on the steps of the courthouse. Maya stood beside her. Behind them were 12 families. Torres stood slightly to the side, not interfering, waiting for Jasmine to decide whether or not to speak. Jasmine looked at the cameras and made a decision. My name is Jasmine Washington, former Pentagon coordinator and Riverside resident. 3 weeks ago, while my daughter and I were sitting on a bench in the park, 2 police officers approached us for no reason, asked for our IDs without reasonable cause, and physically detained my 18-year-old daughter while she was studying. Her voice reflected the measured authority she used in Pentagon briefings. I filed a complaint. 2 days later, Broderick raided my home at 6 in the morning with a fabricated search warrant, destroyed my belongings, and tried to fabricate charges. The only reason I'm standing here fighting these false charges is because I had resources most people don't have. I had federal connections. I was educated. I had the ability to fight back. He paused for a moment and looked directly at the cameras. But the 12 families behind me didn't have those resources when Broderick targeted them. They lost their homes. They lost their savings. Some wasted years in legal battles over fabricated charges. They thought they were alone. He gestured to the families. They weren't alone. It was a pattern. A systematic operation designed to funnel black families' wealth to connected contractors. It stopped because we came together and documented that pattern. A reporter asked, "What do you want to happen now?" I want convictions. I want meaningful penalties that reflect the gravity of what these officers did. I want families to receive compensation for their losses. I want structural reform at the Riverside Police Department so this never happens again. Jasmine paused. But more importantly, I want everyone who has been subjected to police abuse to know they are not alone. This pattern can be documented. If you are willing to fight, justice is possible. Sometimes if you apply enough pressure, the system can work. She stepped back. Questions continued, but Torres politely ended the conference. Jasmine directed Maya and her family to federal vehicles. In the car, Maya looked at her mother. That was really good, Mom. It was right. That's all it took. The phone rang. A message came from General Hayes. Pentagon statement is being broadcast live. Full corporate support. Well done. Another message came from Torres. The mayor's office wants a meeting tomorrow. The city council is discussing reform measures. They want your opinion. Jasmine watched Riverside pass by, the city she had returned to after her husband's death, where she had built a quiet life, but which had been destroyed by men who thought they would go unpunished. These men were under federal arrest, facing decades in prison. The city was beginning to understand that what had happened to Jasmine Washington and the 12 families was unacceptable. Victory had not yet been won. The trial would be long and difficult. Families would testify and relive the trauma. Defense attorneys would question credibility. The process would be exhausting, but the accountability mechanism had been set in motion. Once started, it was very difficult to stop. Jasmine thought of her husband. The mechanical failure that killed him, caused by equipment that couldn't be replaced due to budget cuts. His departure from the Pentagon because he couldn't sit in rooms where acceptable risk calculations included other people's lives. She wondered what her husband would say about what she was doing. Would he be proud? She thought he would. She hoped he would. Maya leaned on her shoulder. What are you thinking? Your father. What about him? He would have wanted us to fight. He would have been proud of what we did. Maya was silent. Then she said, I think so too. Mother and daughter, survivors of something that should never have happened, striving for those responsible to be held accountable, drove in a comfortable silence. The city flowed by outside. An ordinary Thursday afternoon. Traffic, shop windows, people going about their business. Most were unaware that, miles away, 7 police officers had begun standing trial without bail on charges that would shape years of police reform efforts in federal court. But some knew. Families knew. Targeted communities knew. And they were watching to see if justice would truly be served, or if the system would protect its own. Jasmine intended to ensure justice was served, not because it was special, because she was trained to coordinate complex operations, and this was just another operation. Different context. Same basic principles. Identify the target, Organize the resources, document the evidence, execute the plan. The target was accountability. The resources were 12 families and federal authority. The evidence was comprehensive. The plan was set in motion. All that remained was implementation. And Jasmine Washington had 15 years of experience at the Pentagon in precisely this area. The trial began on April 15th, exactly as planned. Federal trials cannot be conducted according to emotional timelines or media cycles. It was conducted with procedural precision, evidentiary standards, and the momentum of a justice mechanism that once slowly but surely set in motion. Judge Margaret Chen presided in her late 50s. She had been a federal judge for 22 years and was known for her meticulous fairness and absolute intolerance of theatrical behavior. Jasmine sat in the gallery every day. Maya sat with her when she didn't have class. Behind them sat a group of 12 families present on a rotating basis. Sometimes all of them, sometimes just a few. But there were always people there bearing witness, making sure the defendants knew they weren't alone. The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating. Vargas began with the pattern. Ladies and gentlemen, for 3 weeks you will hear the testimony of 12 families. Different ages, different backgrounds, different neighborhoods. But every story follows the same structure. Targeted, rated, accused, pressured, displaced. This consistency is no coincidence. It is evidence of a systematic operation designed to enrich the defendants at the expense of families who have committed crimes. He presented the evidence in chronological order, family by family. Starting with the oldest case from 8 years ago, he progressed to the Jasmine and Maya case from 3 months prior. Each family testified. The details differed, but the pattern was the same. Fabricated search warrants, aggressive raids, destroyed property, false accusations, financial pressure, forced sales to Riverside Holdings or affiliated companies. The defense strategy was predictable. Question credibility, to suggest the families were exaggerating, lying, or engaging in criminal activity that justified the raids. To portray Broderick as a dedicated public servant who had to use aggressive tactics to keep the community safe. But the evidence was comprehensive. Financial records showing property transfers, correspondence between Broderick and his brother-in-law, search warrant applications showing non-existent informants, body camera footage contradicting official reports, civilian recordings taken in the park showing Kaninket and Dwyer's behavior toward Jasmine and Maya. On the 8th day, Jasmine testified. She walked to the witness stand in a dark suit, with a military posture and a calm expression. She had briefed Pentagon personnel for 15 years. She testified before congressional oversight committees. The federal courtroom did not intimidate her. Vargas conducted direct examination. Miss Washington, please tell the jury about your professional background. Jasmine did so. 15 years at the Pentagon, Logistics Coordination Division, Crisis Response, Supply Chain Management for military operations in 7 countries. She resigned honorably after her husband's death. So what are you doing now? I work as a consultant for a civil defense contractor. I coordinate logistics and risk assessment for private companies working with the Department of Defense. Vargas methodically established her credibility. Education, security clearances, performance evaluations, letters of commendation. When the questioning ended, the jury realized they had heard from someone with reliable judgment on matters of national security. Then the park incident. Jasmine recounted the incident in detail, as she always did. There was no exaggeration. There were no emotional overtones. Just the facts, in chronological order. What did you do when Officer Dwyer grabbed your daughter's arm? I made a decision. I had 2 options. Physically escalate the situation, giving the officers grounds for arrest and potential use of force. Or institutionally escalate the situation, documenting an interaction that exceeded their authority to subdue. I chose the institutional escalation. So you called General Hayes? Yes. And what happened 2 days later? Lieutenant Broderick raided my home at 7:15 a.m. with 8 officers and fabricated a drug search warrant. They destroyed my property, searched for drugs that weren't there, and tried to fabricate probable cause for arrest to pressure me into dropping my complaint. Vargas showed photos on the monitors in the courtroom. Jasmine's ransacked living room, empty kitchen cabinets, slashed furniture, systematic destruction documented by Torres's forensic team. How did that make you feel, Miss Washington? The defense objected. It invites speculation about emotional state. Overruled, Judge Chen said. The witness may respond. Jasmine looked directly at the jury. I felt what Lieutenant Broderick wanted me to feel. Violated, afraid, powerless. He wanted me to believe that the consequences would get worse and worse until I filed a complaint about the officers, withdrew the complaint, and left Riverside for the consequences to get worse and worse. She paused. But I also felt something he didn't anticipate. I felt what I felt when coordinating crisis response to systemic problems at the Pentagon. I felt the need to document this pattern and build a comprehensive case for structural change. Vargas smiled slightly. So did you do that? Yes. Agent Torres and I contacted other families who had suffered similar treatment. I organized their testimonies. I created timelines and evidence structures. I helped document a comprehensive model that formed the basis of this case. The cross-examination was aggressive. Broderick's lawyer tried to imply that Jasmine was motivated by revenge, not justice. He tried to imply that she was exaggerating the impact of the assault. He tried to question why she didn't accept the settlement offer and move on with her life. Jasmine answered each question calmly and definitively. She didn't get defensive. She didn't get emotional. She simply presented the facts and let them speak for themselves. Is it true that the city offered you significant financial compensation in exchange for withdrawing your complaint? Yes. And you rejected that offer? Yes. Why? If your concern was damage to your home and trauma to your family, wouldn't the compensation have alleviated those concerns? Jasmine looked at him steadily. The settlement would have addressed my concerns, but it wouldn't have addressed the systemic problem. This operation ruined 12 families. While helping my family, it would have been morally unacceptable to leave the operation as it was and target others. The lawyer tried to approach it from a different angle. You have significant resources, federal connections, Pentagon connections, legal knowledge. Most people don't have these. Could what you experience simply be strict law enforcement that seems excessive because you're not accustomed to how police operate in neighborhoods with high crime rates? I grew up in Riverside, Jasmine said. In the neighborhood where the 3 targeted families lived. I know very well how the police operate. What happened to me wasn't strict law enforcement. It was systematic abuse designed to achieve an illegal purpose. And having the resources to fight back doesn't make it any less illegal. It just shows I'm luckier than families who don't have those resources. The cross-examination went on for another hour. The lawyer couldn't land a single effective blow. When Jasmine stepped down from the stand, the jurors' expressions showed they found her testimony credible and convincing. Maya testified the next day. She was nervous. She had never been in a courtroom before, but she spoke clearly and directly. I was working on differential equations on a park bench. 2 police officers approached me without explanation. They asked for my ID. He grabbed my arm. I was scared. She looked at the jury. I'm 18 years old. I'm a college student. I've never been arrested. I've never been in trouble. I was sitting in a park with my mother, and suddenly I was treated like a criminal. I didn't understand why at the time. I understand now. Why? Vargas asked gently. Because Lieutenant Broderick wanted our house. And the first step to getting it was to make us feel like we didn't have the right to be in our own city. The defense tried to shake her testimony, but Maya remained resolute. Her mother's daughter had learned to think clearly under pressure, to present information accurately, to refuse to be intimidated. By the end of the second week, the prosecution had presented its entire case. The pattern had been established. The evidence had been documented. The witnesses were credible. The defense's case lasted 3 days. Broderick's character witnesses, his colleagues, community members who claimed he was an effective leader. The force usage experts stated that the raids followed standard protocols, but they couldn't address the financial evidence. They couldn't explain their communications with the real estate company. They couldn't explain why 12 unrelated families described the same experiences. They couldn't explain the fabricated search warrant affidavits. Closing arguments were made on Tuesday morning. Vargas was firm and methodical. The evidence shows a criminal organization, systematic, organized, profitable. The defendants abused their authority for financial gain. They destroyed families. They betrayed the public trust. They acted with confidence that they would never be held accountable. Your verdict will determine whether that confidence was justified. The defense's closing argument was aggressive but empty. The government wants you to believe that dedicated public servants who served for decades suddenly became criminals. The evidence does not show this. The evidence shows that law enforcement activities carried out in complex ways in tough neighborhoods are being questioned by people who do not understand the realities of police work. The jury deliberated for 11 hours over 2 days. When they returned, the jury foreman was a black woman in her 60s who had been a high school teacher for 30 years. She read their verdict in a clear, calm voice. Lieutenant Derek Broderick, guilty on all 17 counts. Officer James Kincaid, guilty on all counts. Officer Michael Dwyer, guilty on all charges. Officers Kemp, Holloway, Davies, Sullivan, guilty on all charges. The courtroom erupted in controlled celebration. Judge Chen allowed the celebration for exactly 10 seconds, then restored order with a bang of his gavel. Sentencing would take place in 6 weeks. The sentencing hearing was brief and procedural. Judge Chen reviewed the pre-sentence reports. He weighed the gravity of the crime. He calculated the guidelines. He read the victim impact statements from all 12 families. He addressed each defendant individually. Mr. Broderick, you had earned the public's trust. You swore to protect and serve. For 8 years you systematically violated that oath. You destroyed families. You betrayed your community. The damage you caused is incalculable. He paused for a moment. I sentence you to 22 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. Broderick's face turned pale. Kincaid and Dwyer, 18 years each. The other 4 officers, 12 to 15 years each. No parole. Federal sentences meant serving at least 85% of the time. The families sat in the gallery, watching the men who had ruined their lives being led away in handcuffs to begin the sentences that would consume the next 20 years of their lives. The press waited outside the courthouse. This time, Jasmine was prepared. She had coordinated with the families. They had decided to make a joint statement. Angela Mitchell spoke first. 3 years ago, our family lost our home. We thought we were alone. We thought we had done something wrong. Today we know we were victims of a systematic crime operation. And today that operation ended. Robert Mitchell spoke next. Our son dropped out of college because of what happened. He'll be returning in the fall. The city has agreed to cover his school expenses as part of the settlement. This wouldn't have happened if Jasmine Washington hadn't brought us together to fight this. The family representatives spoke one by one. They described what they had lost. They described what they had regained. They described what justice meant. Jasmine spoke last. These families are extraordinary. They survived something designed to destroy them. They came forward knowing there would be risks. They testified knowing they would be attacked. They did it because they believed justice was possible. She paused for a moment. I am grateful that I was able to help coordinate their efforts, but the credit belongs to them. They did not allow Broderick's activities to continue unquestioned. A reporter asked, "What's next?" The city asked me to help design a new police oversight structure. Community-based, federally overseen, with real enforcement mechanisms. I'll do this job because institutional change will prevent the next Broderick. He paused again, but first I'm going home. To the house the city fully repaired. With my daughter, we'll sit in our park and be ordinary Riverside residents again. 2 months later, on a Sunday afternoon in October, Jasmine and Maya returned to Riverside Park. The same park, the same bench, exactly 1 year after the event that started it all. Maya had brought her differential equations textbook. Different class, same subject. Engineering required a lot of math. She sat down on the bench, opened her book, and began solving problems with intense concentration. Jasmine sat down next to her, this time with a novel she was actually reading. The October sun was warm. The air carried the first signs of autumn. Ducks still circled the pond looking for bread. Everything was the same. Everything was different. The police presence had changed. The patrol cars searching for targets were gone. In their place were community security officers, hired from the neighborhoods they served, trained in de-escalation and community engagement rather than aggressive enforcement, who patrolled on foot. One of them, a female officer named Patricia Rodriguez, passed by and nodded respectfully. "Good day, Mrs. Washington. It's so nice to see you both." "Good day, Officer Rodriguez," Jasmine replied. Rodriguez continued her patrol, visible but not intrusive, present but not threatening, community policing as it should be. Maya looked up from her textbook. "This feels different." "Different," said Jasmine. "Different in a good way." "Yes, baby, different in a good way." They sat in comfortable silence. Other families were in the park, children were playing, people were walking. The ordinary rhythm of a Sunday afternoon in a city that had been through a difficult period, changed but not broken. Jasmine's phone vibrated. A message from Torres. Final settlement approved. All 12 families will receive full compensation and punitive damages. Total, $8.4 million. Your family's share, $340,000. Her daughter read the message and was silent. "That's a lot of money," Maya said finally. "It is. What are you going to do with it?" "Your college fund. Home repairs are covered. But we can make improvements, save a little, and donate to a legal fund for families fighting similar cases elsewhere. Because this isn't over everywhere, just here." Maya nodded slowly. "Seems right." Another message. "General Hayes, if you're interested, the Pentagon has approved the advisory position. Part-time, remote, crisis coordination for domestic emergency response. Good pay, allows you to stay in Riverside. Think about it." Jasmine read the message twice. The Pentagon was offering her a way back. Not full-time. Not a demanding commitment that would make it impossible to be with Maya, but enough to keep her skills sharp and contribute to something important. She would think about it. She would probably say yes, but today she would just sit on this bench with her daughter, being a mom in the park on a Sunday afternoon. "Mom," Maya said, without looking up from her textbook. "I've made my decision. I'm changing my major to criminal justice." Jasmine had expected this. "Are you sure? Engineering is a good field." "I know, but this is more important. I want to do work that prevents what happened to us from happening to others. Your father would be proud of you." Maya almost smiled. Would he? He would. As the afternoon turned to evening, they sat together. The sun began to set slowly. The golden light bathed everything in warmth. A family was passing by. Mother, father, and 2 small children. The children were running toward the playground. The parents were following them at a leisurely pace, hand in hand, smiling. Ordinary, safe, fearless. Jasmine had fought for this. Not just for justice for 12 families, not just for prison sentences for corrupt officials. For this, so families could exist in public spaces without fear. So black mothers could sit on park benches with their daughters without calculating the threat level. So communities could trust that uniformed people were there to protect them. It wasn't perfect. The reforms were new and untested. Oversight structures could fail. Other Brodricks could emerge elsewhere. The work of building fair systems was never done, because systems required constant maintenance and attention. But here, now, in Riverside, on this bench, on this Sunday, things were better than they had been a year ago. They were measurably better. They were documentably better. The changes were better because they were structural, not superficial, and therefore permanent. Jasmine's phone rang. An email had arrived from Mayor Elizabeth Chen. Next month, there would be a community safety summit, superficial but structural, so they would be permanently better. Jasmine's phone rang. An email had arrived from Mayor Elizabeth Chen. A community safety summit would be held next month. They wanted her as the keynote speaker. Would she consider it? She would consider it, but not today. Today she would just sit here and read her novel, watch her daughter study, and live in the peaceful, ordinary, hard-won security of this October Sunday afternoon. The ducks continued their patrol of the pond. The children continued to play. The community safety officer continued his patrol. The city went about its ordinary business. And Jasmine Washington, former Pentagon coordinator, survivor, organizer, mother, sat on the park bench with her daughter and felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Home. Not the repaired home waiting for her. Not the city, even though Riverside was her city, but the feeling of belonging to a place that was hers. Not because of her resources, connections, or education, but because the systems tasked with protecting people were actually working as they should. It was a fragile feeling, hard-won, requiring constant care, but it was real, and that was enough. Maya closed her textbook. I'm done with these problems. Can we get ice cream? Jasmine smiled. Yes, baby, we can get ice cream. They got up together and walked toward the exit through the park. They passed the playground where children were playing. They passed the pond where ducks were swimming. They passed the bench where, a year ago, 2 police officers had approached them, setting in motion the events that led to the dismantling of a crime syndicate and the transformation of the city. The bench was now just a bench, a wooden and metal bench in the park. Now just an ordinary piece of public infrastructure in an ordinary public space, bearing no traces of the trauma. They walked toward the ice cream shop 2 blocks away, mother and daughter, their steps relaxed and unhurried, the warmth of the October afternoon enveloping them, the work of justice behind them and ahead of them, always continuing. But this moment, this Sunday afternoon, was sufficiently complete. In the park behind them, a new family sat on the same bench, a woman and her teenage son. The woman had a book in her hand. The boy had a laptop in his. They settled in with the ease and comfort of people who belonged there, and no one approached them. No one questioned their right to be there. No one asked for their ID, raised false suspicions, or made them feel they didn't deserve the simple, ordinary pleasure of a Sunday afternoon in a public park. Because Jasmine Washington and 12 other families had not allowed Broderick's operation to continue unquestioned. Because Torres had built a comprehensive federal case. Because the jury had found him guilty. Because the judge had handed down a sentence. Because systems, when properly implemented and persistently pushed, sometimes really do work. Not always, not everywhere, but here, now, today. And that made all the difficult moments of last year worthwhile. It was worth it all.